Hey, welcome everyone to this very nice webinar about skills, the skills revolution. My name is Rick. I'm the CEO of AG5. I started this company back in 2018. For people who don't know our company, we build a skills management software and we hyper focus on frontline workers. Most of our customers are in Europe, 60%, but still 25% is from the US, and the other 20%, 25% is around the world. And I'm really happy with this webinar because why we started a partnership, I think a year ago with UKC, that was done with Matthew. And because of this partnership, we had a lot of conversations and the marketing said, hey, it would be great if the knowledge that we both have as companies show this in a webinar, how skills management and planning software can work together. So they introduced me a few weeks ago to Emory. And after that meeting, I was so happy because I think he's really the perfect guy to talk about this subject. So I can give an introduction, but I think it's much better if you do yourself. Oh yeah, and I'm the clicker today, so I will see if this works. So this was my intro, and let's go to you, Emory.
All right. Well, that AI generated picture on the screen really makes me look good. So I'm Emory Lane. I'm with UKG. I'm the Senior Industry Principal for Manufacturing. And what that means is that I work with customers and prospects, and I bring the manufacturing expertise to our software. UKG is a, a large HCM full suite product. We have time and attendance, payroll, we have everything. And what I do is I work with customers, helping them understand how to utilize all the aspects of the UKG system, because data is one of the big strategies that we have, as well as AI, basic workforce intelligence, and then I can't help it, I'm a big operational excellence guy. And I have 30 years experience. My first job was in manufacturing, been in manufacturing ever since. And that's really all I have. I'm from Georgia. If you notice the accent, you folks in the US, so bear with me.
Let's do that. If we look at the agenda for today, 45 minutes, we're going to talk about the subject. Then we have still some 10 till 15 minutes left for Q&A. People can already, if you have a question, please put it in the chat, and Larissa or Heather or Matthew can answer that. And we will share these slides after the show. And you know, talking a few weeks ago, the first time with Emory, the other people said, okay, we need some railroads to make sure that this webinar is going in the right direction. So they came up with a few questions for us. It feels a little bit like a quiz for me. So we're going to look at the first question, Emory, and let's see what we think of that. That's a nice question. Shall I kick this first question off?
If you would.
Yeah. So, yeah, the skills revolution, what I see, if we talk about skills revolution, I always think two things if I talk to customers. First of all, what are we talking about? Is this about, for example, the office? Because that's a different direction if you talk about skills management revolution for the frontline workers. So if you talk very quickly about the office, what we see there is still, even today, the skills library at the office, the collecting of the data is still, I would say, even pretty empty. You know, if you go to a finance department and you go to a bookkeeper and, you know, what kind of results or what kind of competences are in the libraries for those specific jobs, we don't see that much at the moment. So what we see there, if there are questions around the office, is most of the time that they have to build up these skills libraries before even starting, you know, with the skills. That is not a direction that we are in and what we're not going to talk about, but the revolution there is, of course, AI. You can say to AI, give me all the skills of a bookkeeper, what are the level descriptions, and you see there, they are taking step in that direction And with that data for the office, you can go into more career planning or use that if you want to assemble a project, you can find people. If I look at frontline, what I see there is skills revolution. The good thing is that if a customer comes to us, there's already a lot of data. You know, it's in Excel, it's a little bit skills data in the LMS systems. There is also some data in the planning systems, but it's most of the time still manual put in, and it's not, you know, really sophisticated. So there are a lot of things happening right now in that area. And Emery, can you tell me a little bit what you see in that part?
Yeah, and you know, you'll hear me bring a lot of what I say, you know, back to retention and employee engagement and sentiment for the company. So, you know, there's several studies out there. I really like looking at the Chamber of Commerce study from last year. I think it was December 2024, where they really put it in terms I could understand. You know, we always talk about like there's going to be a $2.1 million shortage of workers in the U.S. Well, the way the Chamber of Commerce put it, which is the simple way I like to look at it, is in 2030, which is only 5 years from now, there'll only be 92 workers for every 100 jobs. So we're going to have to make sure that we have a skills revolution, because we're going to have to start upskilling folks. They're going to have to start using AI. They're going to have to, you know, because think about this, we're going to bring people, we got to have skills in the system, not on a piece of paper, not an Excel spreadsheet, because everybody's got to know where they got to go. Because nowadays, you know, if the supervisor a lot of times handles all these skills, you know, he knows them in his head. Well, we got to get them in a system, because again, the skills revolution is coming. We're going to start upskilling people very quickly so that we can fill that gap between 92 and 100.
And you say we have to upskill, but the workforce, I mean, we want it, but are people, the workers itself, you know, do they want the reskilling and the upskilling, and you know, how are they looking at this part?
Well, if you think about, you know, again, back to engagement and turnover and all of these things, employees want to be engaged, and most employees that we've studied here at UKG, we find that their attitude is yes, they would like to learn more and they want to progress up. And what happens a lot of the time is we train people via the stand by someone, the mentor technology, you know, where we stand by someone who would be their mentor. Well, what I just say the Gen Zs or some of the millennials, even they want to be able to, you know, gain their skills, you know, via the phone in their hand. You know, it messes up when I show my phone on the screen, but yeah, you know, these guys, they want to learn everything they can about that job and then have that on the job training to finish it off. And that's just different from what we've done in the past in manufacturing, especially. I mean, we have, you know, like most big manufacturers have SOPs, but they were probably only defined and used properly in the last couple of years. So it's been really hard for people to use their device to learn a new job, but we have to go in that direction.
And you said it's difficult to learn only in the 5 years, these SOPs. Why is that? What is the reason for that?
Well, it is, you know, we've made a lot of companies say 10 years ago, they started working on SOPs and workflows and process diagrams and process maps. And so that made it easier for the training team. And we use tools to help the training team, you know, be able to upskill folks. Now we've gotten that where you don't have to sit in front of a PC. You can actually do that on your own time from your device. So there's many tools out there now that allow you to open up your own horizons. And you know, all you got to do is, you know, you don't necessarily nowadays have to, hey, Mr. Supervisor, I want to learn how to be this. You know, there's opportunities online to go ahead and start that training. And when you're ready to go, say, hey, Mr. Supervisor, I've attained all these skills and passed these certifications online. I'm ready to go to work.
Do you think if we go more in that direction, you know, learning on the phones, is there already some proof in retention rates? Because turnover is still pretty high. I mean, especially if we talk to US customers, we still, that is still where they struggle a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, if you look at turnover, I just did a study with two customers. We have, you know, UKG has billions of time card punches, and so we have a lot of data. And on our data strategy is to help our customers, you know, look at what's going on. And what we found is there's two large companies, and both of them showed that we were at 90% turnover in the frontline entry level jobs. Okay, so
Entry level.
we're obviously not doing what we need to do. So what we looked at was, you know, why do you think that's happening? And what we found is most of the entry level folks are Gen Zs, and they want to learn from the phone. They want to hire from the phone. They want to interview from the phone. They want to see their payroll from the phone. They want to see their schedule. They want to see everything from the phone. And one of the things that we're finding is it's harder. You know, you can use AI tools because you got a lot of data. So the employee can just like ask the phone whatever they need to know. But again, from a skill standpoint, we have got to meet the employee where the employee's at. And now the Gen Z, which is about 34, 35% of the population workforce, we have, I'm sorry, I looked down at the chat, I shouldn't have done that. But I'll agree with you. But so, you know, we got to meet the employee where the employee's at. And if that employee, like my son, he's 23 years old, you know, he doesn't really know when there wasn't an iPhone. You know, I mean, in 2007 or 8, they came out. And so he doesn't know life without an iPhone. And they do everything. They talk to one another. Well, excuse me, they don't talk to one another, but that's how he gets his skills from work. He is able to do he's a customer service rep. He's able to do his training on his phone. So he sits out in the car at lunchtime and does his mandatory training on the phone.
And if the turnover is 90% of these used customers, they were not able to you know, to provide this by phone. So they switch to companies where the technology is much better and where they go to. Is that what you saw?
Yeah, absolutely. Because that's the thing, you know, the employee has the advantage right now in the workforce because, you know, they're in need. So if you don't meet them where they are, if you don't have the technology that they think they're looking for, you know, they have a mindset that says, hey, this is what I want to do. They just walk across the street because they talk to one another and they say, hey, you know, if you go over to work at company ABC, here's what you get. Boom, they're gone. Because again, they have the advantage.
Boom, they're gone. Okay, this is a nice, this is already a nice statement. Let's see what our next question is, what we're gonna talk about. Okay.
Yeah, because I just thought Larissa was gonna have a connection. She was looking at the time clock. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah, the last 5 years, the involvement in planning strategy. Yeah, of course, I've never worked in manufacturing, but the last 8 years, I'm in contact a lot to customers who are in the manufacturing space. And what I saw, you know, especially 5, 6 years ago, there was a real disconnection between, or not even, they did not even talk, you know, the skills management was a part with all the LMS, and there were the people involved from training and the training coordinators and, you know, all that data, but it was not communicating, I would say, to the plannings department. Plannings department was, for me, 5-6 years ago, was really about headcount. Do we have enough people to run the factory tomorrow based on the job roles? And if I look at the evolution, and I see it's maybe stupid, but what we see is in the integration. So 5 years ago, all the integrations requests that we got were from HR and LMS systems. And now we see the movement going into the planning systems. We see, hey, can we connect those two worlds? So there is a long time, I think, a disconnect, or not even the awareness, to mix. And maybe it had to do that, first of all, you need to get all these outdated systems on skills management, just in one place and connected with your HR and your LMS so that you have an overview. But planning was not. I think the interest is just in maybe since 2 years we see it going really much up. What do you see? What is your feeling about planning strategies and how it evolved the last years?
Well, I think there's, in my opinion, there's two issues that we have. Well, I think one of the things is I just keep going back, turnover. So we have a lot of turnover. When we have turnover, that means now that guy that could run 5 different kinds of machines and it didn't matter anymore, that guy's gone. And we have someone in there that's been there a year or a year and a half, 18 months, who can only run one machine. So in the past, the supervisor only needed to know, hey, I got 5 different types of machines, but all my people are trained on everything. I really didn't need to know what my balance was of my employees. And planning didn't need to know that either, because they just said, hey, we're going to run, these machines and they're going to run this amount of production. Well, now you got to be real careful because you just don't have that experience anymore, and your turnover is so high. You have to say, okay, this person can run this set and this set. So you have to manage the workforce in a different way than you did even a few years ago. And you also got to remember, data acquisition and data is so much more prevalent now, and accurate data. So the scheduling is much more dynamic. I mean, I can remember 5 years ago, we scheduled a month in advance. Now we schedule like 3 days out. So manufacturing's had to make that change. But again, we got to be really careful when we say, hey, we want to run these machines, that we got the right people to run the right machine at the right time.
Yeah. And so it also says you need to be much more flexible these days than, let's say, 5. And maybe stupid, but there's also a lot going on in the world with all the tariffs. So the European manufacturers have to look at that, in the US. So the whole way you organize, or what you, the logistics are getting different. So does that also influence planning a lot, so that there's more pressure on flexibility, or is that a wrong connection that I make?
No, I think anytime there's any pressure on inputs, so maybe raw material inputs, we're not getting the level of raw materials we get. So, we're going to still sell product. So you can, that amount of folks you need to work is constantly going up and down. And so what we need to be doing is training our people, during the down and work during the up, and make sure that we have these things in place, because if not, every time there's a shortage of an input, raw material or anything, then the people are going to go somewhere else. Because we found in studies so far that if you work less than 20% of your schedule, because pretty much people believe they should work 40 hours when they go to work. If you work less than that, I'm saying less than 32 hours, in most companies, at least the last one I looked at before I came on here, 56% of turnover in that group. No matter how long they've been with the company, they leave, and those are issues. That's why it's so important now to make sure that you know what your workforce is capable of and keep them skilled at the right level to run the machines or equipment that you need to run.
Yeah, yeah. No. Okay. Um, let's look at what they have as a next question. Oh, wow. Yeah. Skills data, analytics. Now we're getting more, I think, in the AI play. I love analytics and skills data. I mean, if you just look at skills management, what we do, the best pages that are visited in our software is always, all the dashboards where people can look at and where they can make decisions. But it's just on our part, and going into a really effective planning strategy. I think AI is going to play a huge role in that. What do you think if you look at this effective work plus Emory?
Yeah, there's again, I like to say, not just say that the fact that we have data, but the fact that we have accurate data now because of the way the data is input into the systems. We can see things that we couldn't see in the past, like you were talking earlier, or I think I said it as well, but in the past, the supervisor had that Excel spreadsheet or a piece of paper in his desk that said what machines people. Well, now we already know what machines they can run. And with analytics, we can see how well they ran the machines. So, with AI, we can do a lot better planning our workforce because we can put people even on machines they want to be on. We can put people on machines that run the best. I mean, there's just so much you can utilize data for nowadays. And again, I'm going back. Let's keep that employee engagement where it needs to be, because behind the scenes you can engage with the employee and say, hey, I need you to run 71 this week. And they can say, they prefer to run 72. All these things can be entered into the system, and then we can accurately, project what our workforce is going to work where, and everybody will be satisfied. They'll be engaged with what's going on.
And with this machine data and how well they perform on those machines, are we going then into a world that you really can compare people against that machine data, that you can see, okay, this person is really better at that machine than that person? Is that the direction that we are going into?
We can get, yes, we have the data to do that today. And with the Internet of Things, we have machines at the company I work for. We have 275 to 350 sensors on each machine. So we can really look back and say, hey, this machine was running correctly to spec, and then we can attribute that, where the humans have more interaction, or it's not machine driven, but where it's more human interaction for machines that stop frequently. Yeah, we have all that data and can see it. I mean, supervisors can see that on the screen. They can see it on the televisions around in the break rooms. So a lot of people have that data.
Yeah, and what we see is, and I think that connects to planning, is the scenarios. So what if we open up a new machine line? What is the demand of skills that we need to open up that line? What does that mean for the workforce? So we see more and more customers are playing scenarios. We even had a customer, they had to close down some parts of the factory, and they made scenarios, if we do this or we do that, so what is the impact? And it's going to be very interesting to put that into the data of the planning also, that you can see the impact on a daily basis, or what will happen in the next 3-4 months with our workforce. That scenario planning, is that also where you see already things are in planning itself? You do a lot of that, or?
Oh, absolutely. Even in the production environment, not necessarily planning, but we're sitting there every day, and we look at our projections. It took so much work and such big Excel spreadsheets to do all this, projections. Now it's on our dashboard. I mean, we're seeing the project, here's what we are on Tuesday, and here's what we project to have by Saturday. We run in 5 days a week. We know, usually by today or tomorrow if we need to work on Saturday for any reason. Sometimes it's because orders come in, sometimes, it's because we can't get people to work. But again, for retention purposes. But again, all that data is there, and the AI tools that we have today are looking at looking at that data, analyzing it, and then saying, here's what you should do. And again, talking about the scenarios, I mean, we have several tools at UKG that do that very thing. I mean, you can take and input data and just adjust different inputs and predict what level of, what number of people you need for what jobs where. So it's quite interesting now what we can do with the data we have.
And if you look at the employee back to the worker at the factory and looking at the mobile, what can we do there? To give them, if they go into the app, and we look at analytics. For example, what we see in planning is that they can also build their own scenarios. Hey, if I have these and these skills, can I move then to that machine? Because those machines have requirements. You cannot just work on that machine. But so if they level up so that they can play their own scenarios in the phone, and already see, hey, I'm missing these skills to go to that specific machinery. So they can start working on that to make their own, succession planning. That's what we see where some demand is right now.
Yeah, and you got to think about, again, we talked about how my son likes to engage with the iPhone. So you're talking about things that in the past an employee would have to go to a supervisor, sit down and have a conversation about, hey, I want to be a mechanic. What have I got to do to be a mechanic? Well, now, all of that stuff's in the system. You know exactly what certifications you got to have and what you have to do to make it to that level. Where in the past, we had the data, it just wasn't in a way that we could utilize it to get it down to where the people could engage with it. It was always stuck at the manager level or the supervisor level. He was the holder of all knowledge.
No, and I think totally right. And I think what you see will be a very logical step is, for example, if an employee logs into the mobile and thinks, hey, I need that skill, but maybe it's just a skill that you have to show to your manager that you're able to switch off a machine, and maybe he thinks already that he can do it. Just push the button and request, come have a look at me, and instead of waiting that you are invited. So it will be more proactive, I think, from the new generation. Looking at the next slide, where are we going? Oh, this is a long sentence. I have to read it almost twice. But I see what they mean. This is all about, and this is a question that we get a lot, of course. It's all about change, the current situation. And if you want to move into more these, let's say that we interact skills management with planning systems, that means change in an organization, change with people, maybe IT kind of projects, global rollouts. And that can be a big step for companies. So how do you look at that, to drive this change?
Well, we've had, job-based for so long. It is going to take, probably, a couple of years to get used. We have people who are out there now with skills-based workforce planning. That's where you get most of your customers from. But it's just a matter of we've got to get used to, in the manufacturing environment, we've got to get used to saying that, hey, let's open this up, let's get the data, let's open it up, and let's have a strict way of training and formatting the data. Because a lot of these LMS systems now, the videos are there, the tests are, everything is there for you to be able to progress by yourself. So we've just got to allow people to do what it is that they want to do and keep them engaged. Because can you imagine if you can start, you tell your supervisor and y'all agree, and you can see your progress in the phone as you're going toward whatever that goal is, it's going to be a whole, the whole engagement and the employee experience is going to be much better if they are in control of what's going on in their life and their work.
Yeah, I agree, but the difficulty is, of course, if you work in this global company and you work in just this factory, how do you get this move? How is your manager, what will be, because they think it's an IT project, and to get this thing done, it's not that easy to make the steps. So we should be very clear about, I think, what can be the outcomes of these projects. And help people who want to go into this change to deliver the what they can expect if they move in this area.
Well, I think it's going to be, I think all we need is, just, from a finance standpoint, we need a return on investment. So what we're going to see, we have all this data, and we're going to see the ones who are leading this effort. What we're going to start seeing is we're going to see how, hey, employee Ginger, she decided to upskill, and then here's what happened to her, and how much more value it brought to both her and the company. And as we get to tell these stories and people start understanding, what is in the background of making this happen, what's the IT structure? What's the data structure? Because there's a lot of people involved in that, manufacturing, training, HR. There's a lot of people involved in the back end. And I think it's just a matter of seeing success and saying, I want to be a part of that successful operation. And there's going to be leaders, and then we're going to have leaders, and then we're going to have followers. But, it's coming. It's like AI. I mean, who knew about AI 5 years ago? Nobody.
Yeah.
But we're going to be doing skill-based workforce planning very soon.
And the other way, if you don't start taking the steps, you're going to be behind, because I think if your competitor is going in this area and making the engagement better, they will have better retention numbers. So, and that will, and turnover will go down. So that will improve the business.
Absolutely, because we have numbers, and if you make somewhere around in the South, we can frontline worker or entry-level people make about $18 an hour. That employee will cost you $19,600 to replace, because of all the things that happen behind the scenes, training, overtime, recruiting, so it's expensive if we don't, if we can do just a few things to eliminate turnover, and by allowing people to be engaged, I mean, we're going to the company is going to be very profitable.
Yeah. That's nice. Let's see what we have. I think this is more like a commercial. No, no, this is just looking at, what I see day to day is, yes, we are getting these skills management systems in place with our customers. We are connecting to all these LMS systems, to the HR systems. And I think the real money or the real value is if we can get into this planning systems. I mean, then we can make the next step for making sure that, people can go with the engagement, that they go to the right machines. And so I think here's a huge benefit if we can click the systems together. And I think the market is now ready to go into this area. It will be new, but I think this will be the next step that will be taken.
Well, no, absolutely, because as our systems develop at UKG, we have many planning tools that run scenarios and create schedules. And if you want to, create a schedule, you need to know, you got to have, your employee count. You got to know what their skills are so that the system can assign them to the jobs. Well, used to, the supervisor would sit there with a piece of paper and, write down everybody's name and then what they could do and, try to figure out, like, oh, I need 25 people this week. My list has only got 23. Well, with the systems that we have today, okay, so you need 25 and on your shift, you only have 23. Well, the system will automatically now promote those opportunities to folks who are eligible, have the right skills, have an opening that won't create fatigue. There's all kind of rules in the system that allow us to do that. And one other thing we do is we try to make sure we meet that unspoken rule that we have with employees that we want them to work whatever we want them to work, whatever we said they would work, 40 hours, 42 hours. So we're always looking at that unfilled space, a capacity there to move them in. So we have systems that create those things. And as we bring used to, again, it was all these Excel spreadsheets passing around to one another. Now, when the planning department has their schedule ready, they just hit a button and say it's ready, and then the employees in the manufacturing area or in warehouse area, or wherever they might be, they just go in the system and create the schedule. And then
No
the
more
schedule
guessing.
says, you don't have to, so a supervisor, 5 to 10 years ago had to have an extremely technical background of what was going on. He had to know everything about everybody. Okay, now you don't have to know all that technical stuff because we have systems and AI and things like that. What I want my supervisors when I work, I want my supervisor out on the floor, engaging employees, talking to employees, figuring out what's going on, because if you look at any of these studies, employee engagement is very high on their list. It's like, when they ask people, do they want to talk to their supervisor, they say no. But then when you ask them if the supervisor ever talked to them, they're mad because he didn't. So, we got to get the supervisor out to talk to them. And you can't have every time the supervisor goes to talk to an employee, it's about something negative. I want my supervisors talking positive all the time.
Yeah.
So again, I think it's just a matter of time that everybody, the leaders are already doing this stuff, and it's not going. People aren't going to be as far behind.
No, and that's why I think this is great. It will be the next step for skills management to really closely work together with the workforce scheduling systems. I think that's going to be the new gold, and it's a logical step. Let's see how. We're almost there. If your listeners, let's see. What would be my takeaway from this conversation? If I think about manufacturing, a lot of people work there every day, and a lot of decisions are made. A lot of decisions every day by a training manager, by a supervisor, by the manager operation, by global management, regional management, and all these decisions, they influence the quality of the products, the production efficiency, safety. And if we, because of this connection of these data, can, these decisions improve by data so that they have more data, accurate data, live data, so that we can improve, and help those people to make better decisions. I think that would be great. And to do that, I think you have to make steps on this part. Because if you don't, the world is going faster and faster. So I think the takeaway would be make little steps, to provide better data to the people who make everyday decisions. So that will be my takeaway. And yours, Emory.
Yeah, and I'm gonna say exactly the same thing, but of course I got to put my slant on it. You know what I want you to take from what we've talked about today is, we want to engage our employees. Okay,
Yeah.
these are all tools to allow you to do that. Okay,
Yeah.
we can see all this data, on our phones because we're hiring Gen Zs and they want to be on their phones. But again, if you can see, your schedule, you can see your opportunities for more work if you want it. You can see your opportunities to grow within the company, and we make it easy for you to do it. Those are all things that are going to create this engagement.
Yeah.
And we're doing the same thing with the supervisors and the managers as well. By having this data that they can use, the system will run the scenarios. The system will go out and say, hey, folks, would you like to work today or would you like to work tomorrow? Or an employee can even go in and say, hey, I want to work this day and not that day, or I can go switch with an employee. So all of these things, like your absence rate's going to go down, your turnover rate's going to go down. You're not going to have to hire as many people in recruiting and onboarding and all of these things. It just builds operational excellence just by doing what we've talked about. I mean, because skills-based workforces, it's there. I mean, we have the data and the technology, and we're
That's
making
the
it
good
happen.
thing, eh? Yeah. The good thing, the data is there. It's in outdated systems, but the data is there. Now it's collecting and making sure it's get real time and connecting with the right systems. Yeah. It's great. I think we are there. Let's see what the last, because this looks like a last slide. Yes, we go over to questions. If we did a good job, there will be no questions. If we did, no. Let's see. I don't know Larissa, can you help us out? Are there some questions that we should go into live or?
Sorry. No, there are no questions right now, but
Okay.
I can see in the chat there's no questions. I think you guys did a great job.
Out there? Is there any questions? Then please put them in. And otherwise, we say goodbye.
Oh, we have a question from Karen.
Okay.
Karen said, how is the planning tool? How does it look like?
Well, when you say it's what you see is you'll see, the data there's two ways you can upload the data into the planning tool. We call it advanced scheduler, but you can load the data in with Excel, you can load the data in with an SFTP site, or you can have a link already built from planning to bring that data in. So what you see is you start with a dashboard, and then you go into dashboard and you go to advanced scheduler, and what you'll see is you'll see what the requirements are, and then over to the side you'll see what people are available or assigned at whatever shift, and then you just say create the schedule. Oh, okay, you want to know what the insights are. Okay, so by using the advanced, this tool, we're able to see exactly, the supervisor already knows how many people short or how many people long he is. So what are the insights? What we see is that when we schedule people properly for 40 hours a week or 42, whatever it is that we've talked about we're going to schedule them for, if you look on both ends, if you look on the fatigue side, people we overschedule and overtime, those people have high turnover. Last date I looked at, people making over 60 hours a week, their turnover was 32%. People who were getting less than 30 hours, their turnover was 56%. And I have also seen companies that were even higher than that. So the insight is being able to flexibly apply the schedule that people want, because they can swap shifts, they can say what days they want to work. So again, being able to have all that stuff in the system and knowing it and allowing the system to create that schedule, it all comes back to satisfaction. You know, is the employee satisfied? Based on the data, you would say yes, because people working in the middle of their schedule, working what we said we would work, are staying employed. Because in that company I was just talking about that had the 32 and the 56, in the middle there, their turnover rate was 4.5%. So if they were just making sure that they were managing people's schedules, they, you know, their turnover rate would go down tremendously. And turnover is very expensive.
And what we see also with when we did some integration with planning system is, for example, onboarding. When we get people in the training part and onboarding, they get their first skills. We can already see also, oh, that skill will be ready in, let's say, by the end of the month. So the planners can already start with planning those people in, because they know from the skills management system when people have certain skills. Other way around, also with expire date, which skills are new coming available. So you see more flexibility in this whole scheduling. Other questions?
I didn't get to see
Emery?
that last chat. I didn't get to see that last chat, Larissa, so I missed it.
Okay.
Sorry, and then we have a question from Adelson. I'm not too sure if you guys have answered this, but he asked, I understand the concept of the scheduling and skill management. What are the main new insights I can get from such integrations?
Well, yeah, I basically answered that. It's going to be employee
Okay, cool.
engagement and reduction in turnover.
Yeah.
Karen also has another question. Is the hour time limited, like only 40 hours a week? We work 14 days, 12 hours a day in the offshore business.
Well, we have tools that work with gas and oil. I'm not as familiar with those businesses, but I know there's fatigue time involved in that and how much overtime people can have. So it really, I mean, I don't know, I'm going to tell you ahead of time, I don't know exactly how they schedule, but we have a tool called Schedule Pro that we use for the oil and gas industry, and it uses all the safety features and compliance issues and all the training things that we're talking about here with Rick.
We have another question from Florent. He says, no live demo. It would have been easier to imagine how solutions can be implemented in our environment.
That's a good remark. Maybe for next time we do a separate meeting, just more the demo. Then we go more into if you put in this in AG5, how will look that in UKG. So, but this was more today about, you know, what do we see in the market, the revolution itself. But that's really good. Maybe for the next phase, Emery, to show a live demo how this could work. But we can also do it, of course, separately for individual people who want to see that.
Yeah, if you guys just get a hold of Rick at ag5.com, we can work that out.
The funny thing, I don't know whose number that is, but that's not my phone number. Larissa, I don't know which one that is, but
so I thought it was your number. Okay.
No, it's not my number. So just use the email.
Yeah, it's definitely not my number, because
okay.
You know, that's at least a European format anyway.
Yeah. I think we're there. Emery, I want to thank you really for joining this webinar and give your insights on how we could do this. I also want to thank Heather and Matthew and Larissa for putting this all together. So have a great day, you all out there. And yeah, if you have any questions, please reach out. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.